All rise. Department 1 of the Superior Court is now in session. Judge Ava presiding.
You may be seated. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Calling the case of the State of California versus Daniel. Are both sides ready?
Ready for the people, Your Honor.
Ready for the defense, Your Honor.
Will the clerk please swear in the jury?
Will the jury please stand and raise your right hand? Do each of you swear that you will fairly try the case before this court and that you will return a true verdict according to the evidence and the instructions of the court, so help you God? Please say, I do.
I do.
You may be seated.
The first thing that happens in a trial is called the opening statement. This is when each attorney can tell the jury what evidence they will present during the trial. The deputy DA goes first and the public defender goes next.
Your Honor and ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the defendant has been charged with the crime of stealing or driving a car belonging to someone else without the permission of the owner. The evidence will show you that a 2004 Corvette was stolen on the night of February 8th. The next day, the defendant was arrested for driving the stolen car. The defendant's fingerprints were on the keys used to steal the car. The evidence I present will prove to you that the defendant is guilty as charged.
Your Honor, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury, under the law, my client is presumed innocent until proven guilty. During this trial, you will hear no real evidence against my client. You will come to know the truth that Daniel was just riding in a car stolen by someone else. After finding out that the car was stolen, Daniel was just trying to do the right thing by returning the car to its owner. Therefore, my client is not guilty.
After the opening statement, witnesses are called to testify about what they know about the case. Sometimes the attorneys want to show physical things, like a weapon or a photograph. To the jury, these things are called exhibits. The jury may only consider an exhibit if the judge admits that exhibit into evidence, when they meet to decide if the defendant is guilty or not guilty.
The prosecution may call its first witness.
The people call the owner of the car.
Raise your right hand. Do you promise that the testimony you shall give in the case before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your first and last name.
Edgar Husbar.
Please spell your last name for the record.
KHOSBAYAR.
Itko, where do you work?
I own Martinez Car Sales.
And what is the address of your business?
102 Main Street, Martinez.
Were you working there on February 8th?
Yes, I was.
Was one of the cars you had for sale a 2004 red Corvette, license number 5CBX239?
Yes.
Did you see the car on the lot on February 8th?
Yes, the car was there when we closed that night.
Did you see the car again on February 9th?
No, it was missing when I got to work that morning.
Where were the keys to the Corvette when you left on February 8th?
They were locked in the sales office.
Where were the keys when you came back the next morning?
They were still locked in the sales office.
Did you file a stolen car report with the police?
Yes, I did.
Had you given anyone, including the defendant, permission to take or drive the Corvette?
No, I did not.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Does the defense have any questions?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
The witness is excused. The prosecution may call the next witness.
The people call the arresting officer.
Raise your right hand. Do you promise that the testimony you shall give in the case before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your first and last name.
Candice Molina.
Please spell your last name for the record.
Molina.
Officer, where do you work?
I've worked for the California Highway Patrol for the past 10 years.
Were you on duty the afternoon of February 9th?
Yes, I was patrolling the freeway between San Ramon and Martinez.
Did you observe a red 2004 Corvette that afternoon?
Yes, I did.
What was the license number?
5CBX239.
Where did you first see the car?
Going north near the exit to Highway 4.
Why did you notice the car?
It fits a description of a car which was on our list of stolen vehicles.
Did you stop the car?
Yes, I turned on my lights and siren and pulled the car over.
Where exactly did you stop the car?
About half a mile before downtown Martinez exit.
And what did you do when you stopped the car?
I ordered the driver to step out and I arrested him.
Do you see the driver in court right now?
Yes, the records will show that the witness has identified the defendant sitting at the defense table.
After you arrested the defendant, did you search the car?
Yes.
What did you find?
I found a set of keys in the ignition.
Are these the keys that you found?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would like to have these keys marked as a People's Exhibit number 1 and ask that they be admitted into the evidence.
Does the defense have any objections?
No, Your Honor.
The keys will be admitted as the People's Evidence number 1. Yes, based on my experiences as a highway patrol officer, they look like shaved master keys.
Can you please tell the jury what a shaved master key is?
Yes, they are keys that have been filed down so that they will start all model type of cars. They are used as tools to steal cars.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Does the defense have any questions?
Yes, Your Honor. Officer, when you pulled the car over, you ordered my client to turn off the ignition, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
So you saw the defendant touch the keys.
Yes.
Do you know how far Martinez Car Sales is from the downtown Martinez Freeway exit?
Yes, it's about half a mile from there.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
The witness is excused. Does the prosecution have any other witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. The people called the fingerprint examiner.
Raise your right hand. Do you promise that the testimony you shall give in the case now before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your first and last name.
Maya Hung,
Please spell your last name for the record.
Hung.
So, Maya, where do you work?
I have been employed by the Contra Costa County Sheriff's Department. I have been a qualified fingerprint examiner for 10 years.
Have you ever seen these keys before?
Yes, I was asked to check them for fingerprints at my lab.
Did you find any fingerprints on the keys as a result of the testing?
Yes, there were several clear print impressions.
Were you able to identify the defendant's prints on the keys?
Yes, the prints I found on 2 of the keys were identical to the prints of the defendant.
Thank you. I have no further questions and no further witnesses, Your Honor.
Does the defense have any questions?
Yes, Your Honor. Maya, as a matter of fact, you also found fingerprints on the keys which did not belong to the defendant, didn't you?
Yes, that is correct.
To whom do they belong to?
I don't know.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
The witness is excused.
The people rest their case.
Is the defense ready with its case?
Yes, Your Honor. I call the defendant.
Under the Bill of Rights, a person who is accused of a crime cannot be forced to testify at their own criminal trial. In our trial today, the defendant has to decide to testify. The prosecution cannot force the defendant to testify. The defendant chooses to testify. The prosecution is allowed to question the defendant.
Raise your right hand. Do you promise that the testimony you shall give in the case now before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your first and last name.
Daniel Garcia.
Please spell your last name for the record.
Garcia.
Daniel, where were you on the afternoon of February 9th?
I was at the 7-Eleven store on South Main Street in Walnut Creek.
Did you see a 2004 red Corvette at that location?
Yes, a guy pulled into the parking lot driving it.
Did you talk to the driver?
Yes, I asked him how fast it was.
What did he say?
He said to get in the car and he would show me.
What did you do then?
I got into the car and he drove onto the freeway going south toward Danville. He was driving really fast.
Do you know what the driver's name was?
Yes, he told me his name was Rick.
You know what his last name was?
I don't know. He never told me.
Have you ever met him before?
No.
Did he tell you where he got the car?
He said he had stolen the car.
When did he tell you that?
When we were on the freeway
How far did you ride with him?
to San Ramon. He didn't stop by then.
What happened when you reached San Ramon?
He said he was getting out and I got a car.
Did you take the car at that time?
Yes.
Where did you go?
I started to drive to Martinez so I could return the car.
How did you know where to return at?
Rick told me he took it from me, Carla and Martinez.
Where were you when the officer arrested you?
On the freeway, just before the exit to downtown Martinez.
Do these keys belong to you?
No.
Have you ever seen them before?
Yes, they were in the Corvette.
Did you touch them?
Yes, when I turned the car off after the officer stopped me.
Thank you, Daniel. I have no further questions and no other witnesses, Your Honor.
Does the prosecution have any questions?
What did this Rick look like?
I don't remember exactly. He had dark hair.
What was he wearing?
I'm not sure. Jeans, I think, and a t-shirt.
Alright. So you just got in a car with someone you've never seen before and you didn't know?
Yes, I've never been in Corvette before.
Did it occur to you at any time to call the police?
Sure, but there wasn't a phone where we stopped, and I don't have a cell phone. Once I started back, I just kept driving.
You wanted to drive the Corvette because it was a fast car, didn't you?
I guess so.
You knew the car was stolen at the time. You were driving it, didn't you?
Yeah.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
The witness is excused. Does the defense rest?
Yes, Your Honor.
All the evidence has now been presented. At this time, the judge will tell you the law you must apply and what are called jury instructions. Listen very carefully to the 3 things the judge will tell you that the prosecution must prove.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I am now going to read you the law that you must follow in deciding this case. To prove the crime charged against the defendant, the prosecution must prove 3 things to you. First, the defendant drove or took a car belonging to someone else. Second, the owner did not give the defendant permission to drive or take the car. And third, that the defendant intended to take away the owner's rights to have the car either permanently or temporarily. If each of you believes that the prosecution proved all 3 of these things beyond a reasonable doubt, then you should find the defendant guilty. But if you believe that the prosecution did not prove any one of these things beyond a reasonable doubt, then you must find the defendant not guilty. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt does not mean beyond all possible doubt. It means that you must consider all of the evidence and that you are very sure that the charge is true. Are you ready with final arguments?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
The final arguments are the attorneys. The last chance to talk to the jury about the evidence and try to convince you to see the case the way they do.
Your Honor and ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the judge just told you that we must prove 3 things. There is absolutely no question about the first 2 things we must prove. First, that the defendant was arrested for driving a car belonging to the owner of Martinez Car Sales. Second, that the owner testified no one, including the defendant, had permission to take or drive the Corvette. Therefore, all we have to prove is that the defendant intended to take and drive the car to keep it away from the owner for at least a little while. The defendant admitted wanting to drive the Corvette because it was fast. The defendant knew that the car was stolen and says that he even thought about calling the police before driving it. But the defendant didn't even try to walk to the telephone instead of driving the car, and didn't even try to stop anywhere between San Ramon and Martinez to call the police. That shows that the defendant intended to keep the car for at least a little while. According to what the judge just told you, that is all we have to prove. Based on this evidence, you must find the defendant guilty.
Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Daniel was unlucky to get into a car with the man who had stolen the car. He got into the car because he had never been in a Corvette before. My client's fingerprints were found on the keys because he had to touch them when the officer pulled the car over. But the prosecution's own expert told you that other fingerprints were found on those keys that could not be identified. I suggest that they belong to the real thief, Rick. Daniel is an honest person and was only trying to return the car to its owner. If he had meant to keep the car, why would he drive it back to Martinez? Remember that under the law, my client is presumed innocent. Prosecution must prove every part of its case beyond a reasonable doubt. That means you must be very sure. One of the things they must prove is that my client intended to keep the car from the owner. My client is the only person who knows what he intended and testified under oath that he wasn't trying to keep the car from the owner, but was trying to return it. The prosecution has presented no real evidence to show that this is not true. That means that there is a reasonable doubt, and therefore you must find him not guilty.
The next step in the trial is when the jury decides whether the defendant is guilty or not guilty. Remember, not guilty is not the same as innocent. If all 12 jurors are unanimous in their decision, this is the jury's verdict. You have heard several witnesses testify, including the defendant. It is up to each of you to decide if you believe a witness for telling you the truth or not. You should consider how the witness behaved on the stand and use your own common sense in deciding whether or not a witness was telling the truth. Remember that it is up to the prosecution to prove the defendant is guilty. The defense does not have to prove the defendant is innocent. If the prosecution has not proven its case, then the defendant is not guilty. Also remember that you can only say the defendant is guilty if the prosecution has proven all 3 of the things the judge told you beyond a reasonable doubt. That means that you will still be sure tomorrow, or next week, or next year. It does not mean any doubt you can think up in your imagination. We won't have you leave the room right now, but we will quickly pick a jury foreperson and give the jury a few minutes to see if they can reach a verdict.
Will the jury foreperson please stand? Has the jury reached a unanimous verdict?
Yes.
If the jury has reached a verdict, the clerk will get the verdict form from the foreperson and hand it to the judge. The judge will read it silently before handing it back to the clerk for the reading of the verdict.
We, the jury, believe the defendant, Daniel Garcia, is guilty. We came to this conclusion because he drove the car without permission of the owner, he drove a car belonging to someone else, and most importantly, he had the intent to keep the car away from the owner for a period of time.